I like you're kind of like you're fucked up like
Yeah, I know.
three
I
and
noticed that. I wonder if that's like something neurological. Oh, yeah. I can't just, man. I can't. I really can't just. No. Yeah, I guess they're on the same tendon. Or can I do it on the other hand? Maybe
one, two,
it's
three,
better on the other hand.
four, five, five. Yeah, I get the same thing.
Uh oh.
I can't just pull the. See if I can do it on this side.
There's something
It's
neurological
a little
here.
easier on this side.
On the
See,
left.
this side here, I've got an excuse. I got a big ass scar right here. I had a skiing accident when I was like 14 or 15 and had my got my
Mm-hmm.
hand cut open, and all the tendons here got severed. So like I physically couldn't lift these fingers up. They just dangled like that. I
That
had to
is
get them
that. That's like
sewn
that's a
back together.
Jesus pose that you had going on right there for a second, isn't it? This one with the.
I think it's like it's it's this. So it's like that. So
Okay.
it's I with the index finger is
Yeah.
I, and then C with the middle finger, and then X with these two fingers here, and then C with the pinky finger. So this is the like when the priest does the sign of the cross outwardly, like toward the congregation, he does it
Mm-hmm.
like that. ICXC, which is there's abbreviation for people who don't know. It's the abbreviation for Jesus Christ in Greek, the first and last letters of each word.
Yeah. Thanks for this really. We're very lucky that we're doing a live reading today because it really would have been me just saying ignorant shit.
Yeah, I was not really at the in the frame of mind to do some sort of like spontaneous monologue about anything. I've got a lot going on in the old ding dong up
The
here,
Baser.
and
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, people are making fun of you for having car troubles.
Yeah. Well, I kind of I hate a little bit. There's a lot I like about the South, a lot. But there's a lot that I don't like about the South too. In the thing I don't like about the South is sort of exemplified today, where I bring my car in nice and early, and then I kind of call around like after lunch, see what's going on. It's like, oh yeah, well we'll have them give you a call, and then kind of call again, and then it's just like, yeah, well, I don't know if it's going to be ready today, but we'll have them give you a call. And obviously, give me a call. And then, it's coming up on like 5 o'clock. I'm just like, hey, is this fucking thing run? Because I'm just going to come get it. And so I'm talking to him. It's like, yeah, well, we had something that we kind of got into here and couldn't quite get to it today. And it just, it makes me want to burn buildings down. And so the only problem with that is just, it's still in me that I feel like a communist if I want to burn a building down. I think a nice workaround to that is the mafia. So I'm here to say on YouTube that I'm very interested in restarting the mafia and just sort of picking up wherever we left off some generations ago. If anyone's listening, I heard stories of relatives, visiting Italy and then getting picked up at the airport back in the day, and being taken to a place, with a lot of, just out of reverence and respect. There's like a dresser drawer full of money, and just people saying, hey, we know who you are. If there's anything that we can do for you, if you need anything, just take what you need, and it's always welcome. I know that slightly less impressive than that. My uncle would get his groceries paid for, like in the north end of Boston, occasionally, like when they knew who he was and who he was related to and all this stuff. And I'm just here to say I'm here for it. Let's get it cranking again, because it's a really great way. It's like the same thing, like the equivalent of like, you show a certain amount of like reverence for fuck Johnson for allowing your progeny to exist in the first place. It just has to be something similar where, like, I'm living in this society. I'm this guy who, like, I'm just trying to keep it between the lines as best as I can. And a lot of times it's a struggle. I don't want to keep it between the lines. I understand I'll go to prison and the whole thing. But if I had the mafia, I would just never be in a situation where I had to try to keep it between the lines, because people would just make sure that they got my car fixed in a timely manner, like it was implied that they would. So however the mafia got started with my great grandfather, whenever back in the day, if those any relatives of them are listening, let me know how I can restart it, please. Thank you. And if you have a hard time keeping between the lines, folks, and you just need to chill the fuck out, what you probably want to do is head over to our lovely sponsor's website. Whenever I make brilliant segues like this, by the way, I always want to do the wrong sponsor. Like I want to go into the thing for like Andrew because I think it'd be funny. But I'm too impressed with how good the segue is. So why don't you go head over to palomaverdecbd.com. It's a fantastic outfit run by our friends Carlos and Vanessa Abelar. And, again, my favorite, green apple. There's no surprises here. I'm a green apple guy, converted from strawberry lemonade to green apple. But you want to know what? You got to make your own decisions in life. So if you head over to palomaverdecbd.com and use promo code KING, you can get 25% off of your order, and explore their wide variety of CBD products. Like I say, Matt and I were gummy guys. I'm definitely a gummy guy. I think Matt has sort of more adventurous than me, perhaps, but also they have pet products available for your spastic ADHD dogs and cats, if you have them.
Speaking of cats, mine will be dying today as soon as the show is over. I didn't have time to complete her murder while we were getting ready for the show, but I came up here, made myself a little turkey sandwich, some mustard on it, came up here, set it down on my desk, ran back downstairs to grab something, came back up, and there was a piece of turkey with Munster cheese on it and mustard just all over the carpet down here beside me, and she's sitting there happily munching away. She's lucky that she's quick, that she moves quickly, because I had death in my eyes when I saw her having to like pick her hair off of it and everything. I wasn't happy. So
I realized
for my cat.
Mine is like very obsessed with like human food also. And
Cooper's going to be like, yeah, serves you right for having a cat.
Like I didn't know that cats were into human food, but some are, some aren't. I mean, I've had cats that definitely couldn't give a shit. But man, this one, like if I'm cooking even, or just eating, man, she's into it. And like, she looks at me like if I'm sitting down, like, man, if you leave, it's over. It's over for that piece of steak, brother.
If we pull out anything like lunch meat or chicken or anything like that, then our cat is like right there, like rubbing up against our legs, meowing, reaching, like stretching up toward the counter as high as she can to try to get after it. So yeah, the only cats I've ever had were all very much into human food. I've never actually encountered a cat that didn't care about human food. But Amy says that if God wanted me to wish harm on people and break a few legs, I'd be 100% down with some mafia shit. I'm treading a fine line these days. Yeah, that's I'm with my wife. I fully support my wife in that. What's up, Carlos? Speaking of the devil.
Yeah, I know. Speaking of my angel, Carlos. It just seems like such a good thing to have handy. Like it's a nice check for the free market. You know what I mean? Quote unquote the free market.
That's right. Yeah. I went and fucked everything up here with the stream because I accidentally forgot to connect the stream to the right one. So I created a new stream when we went live, and now I'm here trying to fix it all. And
oh Lord,
today is a day.
Today seems like it is a day. It seems like it's like a calamity of errors kind of day, from irresponsible auto garages to precocious cats
to retarded podcasters.
Is Paloma Verde hiring? Shit. That's a funny one.
Yeah. All right.
Good question. Yeah. Carlos, need any video work, buddy?
Yeah. How about sales? Okay. So today, you guys can see by the title that we're doing something that's familiar and yet different. We're doing a live read, which is familiar, but we're doing something that's different, which is a live read of something that is not necessarily political. And this is kind of part of our new leaf that we're turning over in our lives as we move into 2022. But this is actually, so on Tuesday what was today? It was on Wednesday. We
Wednesday.
had a very rousing conversation with the Warlords roundtable group with our supporting listeners in the Discord. And what are you laughing about?
I just want to give a shout out where it's due, because I still think about it sometimes and I laugh. And he just fucking said it when he fucking. I was telling a charming anecdote, well, a terrifying anecdote about China and my friend's experience in China. I asked if anyone had ever been to China, knows anyone who's been to China, and Cooper goes, "I've seen Gran Torino." And so if you would like to join the supporting listeners group, you can go to fucking subscribestar.com/KingPhil. Because I don't know how that's not worth it alone. Oh, I've laughed several times about that.
So normally when you do these Warlords roundtables, they've usually been, I think this is the 5th one that we've done. They've usually been about 3 hours. There's usually somewhere between 6 and 10 people there, and we talk for about anything and everything for about 3 hours. So this time, we started a little earlier than we usually do, because we usually start at like 6 or 7 p.m. Pacific time, 6 or 7 p.m. And that's the only way that Steven will acknowledge any Pacific time that I mention, is if I put it in quotes. So we usually start about 6 or 7. This time we started at 4:30, and apparently all these guys took that as a sign that we should just keep going and going and going and going and going. So it'd been about 3 hours, and I said, all right, I got to get wrapped up here. I've got some I got to go spend some time with my little boy before he goes to bed. And it was like, yeah, we kind of got to go too. And so then I'm trying to like talk about like, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to, next week, we're going to do our book club get together. We'll talk about our books from this last month, and then like look ahead to the new books for next month. And I'm trying to like kind of like get these details ironed out, and these motherfuckers just won't stop talking. They just keep bringing up new subjects. Steven is like
there was a lot to talk about.
It was like everyone was simultaneously having a manic episode. And so I'm sitting here like trying, and finally I was just like, you know what, fuck it. I don't have to stay here. So the first thing I did is I turned the recording off, because what I didn't want was me to leave and like 2 minutes later everybody to finish off and it to sit here and just record empty space for forever, because I eventually have to edit the video and get it uploaded. So
well, it was really good because we started talking about the Chinese government, so it's being recorded anyway. So why be redundant?
Right. So I go, I turned the recording off, which of course says the little voice like recording stopped, and everyone kind of looks at me, and I was just like, see you guys, and I peace out, go down, dinner, put the little guy to bed, prayer, all that, and I leave from laying him down. Amy usually lays down with him for a little while before he falls asleep. So I come walking back in here to shut everything down. I look in here, and everybody's still going. Not everybody. Several people had left, but Andrew had come back. He'd logged back in when he finished his show. Yeah,
no.
Yeah. So
great.
Andrew is in here with a handful of other guys, and they're talking about the anti-tax, and then I sat there with them for
the anti-tax, Andrew. That's weird. Okay.
So I sat here for maybe another 30 minutes after that. This is like 9 p.m. Pacific time. So everyone ended up being in there or several people ended up being in there for probably about 5 hours, I think. And it was great. It was great. We had a really, really good conversation, talked about some really interesting stuff. And one of the things that we did is we planned out the next round of books that we're going to do for the book club this next month. So first of all, the books that we finished for this last month were, well, not all of us have finished all of them, but the books that were on the docket to read for November were The Language of Creation by Matthew Pajot, Why Liberalism Failed, or Liberalism, Why It Failed. I don't remember exactly the title, by Patrick Deneen, and there was one other one. Render Unto Caesar by Venermani. Those were the 3 books that we read for last month. So on Tuesday, we're going to be doing a live call with anybody from the Supporting Listeners group who wants to join in. We're going to do a live Zoom call, and we're going to talk about those 3 books. We're going to talk about what we learned, what we liked, what we didn't like. Who knows how long we're going to go, but it'll be Tuesday. And I think we said we're going to start at 6:30 Pacific. So if anybody who's not part of the supporting listeners group is interested in that, you can just go sign up. Anybody can be a part of the book club. Anybody can read the books. Obviously, if you want to be a part of the call, if you want to join in the Zoom call, then it'll be the helicopter pilot and Warlord tiers. Will get the link to join in for the Zoom call. So just so you guys know, if you want to sign up, that's something that's on the docket for you guys. So the 3 books now for next month that we're going to read, that we settled on, were so Fingerprints of the Gods by Graham Hancock, which we're going to be reading from today, Imperium by Francis Yockey, and now I forgot the third one. I just said that.
We're gonna read it.
We're gonna read it twice. Yeah. There's a third book, but I can't remember exactly which one it was. Someone in the chat will have it. So that's going to be the new this next month. Those will be the 3 books that we'll be discussing. So if you want to join in at the Warlord level, then we do a live call twice a month. We get together every other week or so, and just do our general bullshit session about anything that anybody wants to talk about. And then once a month, I think the way it's looking like, once a month we'll do a live call for any helicopter pilot or Warlord who wants to join in and talk about the books that we're reading. So we thought that today we would, for those of you who, Bronze Age Mindset, that was the other one. So Fingerprints of the Gods, Bronze Age Mindset, and Imperium. How could I forget BAP? I'm so ashamed. So we thought that today we would do a little live reading here from one of the books. And of the 3 books there, it's the one that I have read. I haven't read Imperium or Bronze Age Mindset yet. I think I might have started Bronze Age Mindset at one point, but it's a particular flavor of book that you have to be in the right mindset to read. And I wasn't at the time. I did not have the Bronze Age mindset when I first tried to read it. So I thought that we would do a little interesting live reading here today of Graham Hancock. So for those of you who are familiar with it, you're gonna already be you already kind of have an idea of what we're getting into as soon as I start reading it. For those of you who aren't, this will probably be something that's either very, very interesting to you or not interesting to you at all. I happen to be in the former category, and so this strikes me as a really good filtering mechanism to
Matthew is here to say that if you don't find it interesting, that he wants you to unsubscribe and then go jump off of a building.
Right.
He doesn't want you around.
You can do short building. It doesn't have to be like a skyscraper or anything, but yeah, correct.
It's 14 feet, so it's mandated that you go to the hospital.
So the section that we're going to read from here is it's chapter 28, and for whatever that's worth to you. And it is the section on the first part of it's entitled The Machinery of Heaven. But what this is he's describing the different astronomical elements related to the movements of the Earth that relate to the system called the precession of the equinoxes. And the reason that this is important is because once you understand the dynamic of the precession of the equinoxes, you can really start to understand a lot of the ancient myths of all these different ancient cultures, and particularly the ones that related to various forms of prophecy or descriptions of global cataclysms, that sort of thing. Anybody who's studied myths across lots of ancient cultures will know that many of them have the same elements in common, where it's pretty clear that they're all referring to the same story or the same category of story. And history, for the majority of human history, the study of history was a mythos. It was a narrative. It was a story that people told each other that had lessons contained within it. It wasn't until, to channel Father Stephen DeYoung from Lord of Spirits, it wasn't until the 19th century Germans that history became a quote unquote science that was obsessed with trying to discover the facts of what actually happened. And that approach to history is it can be helpful on one hand to some degree, but by and large, when you treat history as just a kind of a naked assembly of facts, and you just try to narrow down on what actually happened, you lose a lot of the story of it. And you wind up in a kind of a self-deceptive mode, because ultimately the quote unquote facts are only facts relative to somebody's perspective, because ultimately every human perspective is subjective. It's only the human being can't see outside of his own perspective. So whenever you're studying history, you're studying other people's perspective on history. So then you're getting your own perspective of other people's perspective of what happened. And uh, there's a lot of it's a very deconstructionist kind of a narrative that has actually done a lot of harm to the human mind and our ability as a society to capture lessons and pass on lessons about the past. And so then you get was it George Bernard Shaw, I think, who said that those who don't understand the lessons of history are doomed to repeat them. So anyways, so a key part to understanding the motivations, or the you might call it like the religions of these ancient cultures, is understanding the degree to which they were obsessed with the movements of the planet. These were astronomically obsessed cultures. And there's a lot of the first time that I read this, it just absolutely blew my mind. Number one, that these cultures that I'd grown up with the typical Western perception of these cultures as being completely like primitive. They're sort of like, their gods were just them kind of using their imaginations to come up with like what caused the wind or something. And really, the truth couldn't be further from that. A lot of these cultures were actually, I've come to believe, far more advanced than we are in a lot of ways. So the whole book is fascinating. It's a fascinating exploration of the possibility of lost ancient civilizations, and he goes through and looks at some different mysteries of ancient civilizations that we like, stuff that they knew that it doesn't seem like they possibly could have known, like maps of Antarctica before there was ice on Antarctica, and before, to our understanding, human beings had the ability to map continents. And there's other things like that as well. He gets into the spends a lot of time on the pyramids and on Central American pyramids and the different Central American and Egyptian and other myths and legends. It's a very, very interesting book. He wrote it in 1995, and at the time, a lot of what he was talking about was completely out in left field. Nobody had any context for it, and he was written off as a complete wacko. But he's only been, by and large, completely what's the word I'm looking for here? Vindicated by the passage of time since then, as more discoveries have been made and more people have started to look where he was one of the first people to look. They've started to vindicate a lot of the stuff that he was seeing. So this section here that I pulled out is talking about the astronomical mechanics that create the precession of the equinoxes, which ultimately underlies the like the study of astrology. And then you can pull out specific principles of numerology and stuff that are embedded in all of these ancient myths. So that's the section we're going to read through here today. I don't know exactly how far we'll go through it, but we'll just go through it until we decide to stop. And if you guys have any, obviously, if you have any questions or anything any comments you want to make that, weighing in on it or asking stuff about it, then feel free to just chime in the comments, and I'll try to see it and answer them. So
someone just disagree with Cooper and just put that in the live chat.
Yeah, fight with Cooper.
Yeah.
It makes us happy when people fight with Cooper.
Yes. It also makes Cooper happy.
It does. Yeah, when Cooper's happy, we're happy.
So happy.
All right, so let's get this. Carlos wants to know when we're going to start a drinking club. I would have to start drinking first. I don't do much drinking, but I'm very open to hosting a drinking club. One of the best things about a drinking club, in my opinion, would be the person who's not drinking, who's around all of the people who are, because I've always found that to be very entertaining. I've always enjoyed drinking myself, and I'm much more of a social drinker than anything else. But being the sober guy around the drunk people can be a lot of fun. Okay, so let's get the screen share here. Pull this bad boy over here. All right, I think I can see everything. All right. Dylan says Cooper's wrong. So
solid start.
Graham, Graham Hancock, Fingerprints of the Gods, Chapter 28, The Machinery of Heaven. Quote, although a modern reader does not expect a text on celestial mechanics to read like a lullaby, he insists on his capacity to understand mythical, quote, images instantly, because he can respect as, quote, scientific only page-long approximation formulas and the like. He does not think of the possibility that equally relevant knowledge might once have been expressed in everyday language. He never suspects such a possibility, although the visible accomplishments of ancient cultures, to mention only the pyramids or metallurgy, should be a cogent reason for concluding that serious and intelligent men were at work behind the stage, men who were bound to have used a technical language. Close quote. The quotation is from the late Giorgio de Santillana, professor of the history of science at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Massachusetts Institute of Technology. In the chapters that follow, we shall be learning about his revolutionary investigations into ancient mythology. In brief, however, his proposition is this. Long ages ago, serious and intelligent people devised a system for veiling the technical terminology of an advanced astronomical science behind the everyday language of myth. Is Santillana right? And if he is right, who were these serious and intelligent people, these astronomers, these ancient scientists who worked behind the stage of prehistory? Let us start with some basics. The wild celestial dance. The Earth makes a complete circuit around its own axis once every 24 hours and has an equatorial circumference of 24,902.45 miles. It follows, therefore, that a man standing still on the equator is in fact in motion, revolving with the planet at just over 1,000 miles per hour. Viewed from outer space, looking down on the North Pole, the direction of rotation is anti-clockwise. While spinning daily on its own axis, the Earth also orbits the Sun, again in an anti-clockwise direction, on a path that is slightly elliptical rather than completely circular. So more like an oval than a circle for the dummies out there. It pursues this orbit at truly breakneck speed, traveling as far along it in an hour, 66,600 miles, as the average motorist will drive in 6 years. To bring the calculations down in scale, this means that we are hurtling through space much faster than any bullet, at the rate of 18.5 miles every second. In the time that it has taken you to read this paragraph, we have voyaged about 550 miles farther along Earth's path around the Sun. With a year required to complete a full circuit, the only evidence we have of the tremendous orbital race we are participating in is the slow march of the seasons. And in the operations of the seasons themselves, it is possible to see a wondrous and impartial mechanism at work distributing spring, summer, autumn, and winter fairly around the globe, across the northern and southern hemispheres, year in and year out, with absolute regularity. The Earth's axis of rotation is tilted in relation to the plane of its orbit, at about 23.5 degrees to the vertical. This tilt, which causes the seasons, points the North Pole and the entire northern hemisphere away from the sun for 6 months a year, while the southern hemisphere enjoys its summer, and points the South Pole and the southern hemisphere away from the sun for the remaining 6 months, while the northern hemisphere enjoys its summer. The seasons result from the annual variation in the angle at which the sun's rays reach any particular point on the Earth's surface, and from the annual variation in the number of hours of sunlight received there at different times of the year. The Earth's tilt is referred to in technical language as its obliquity, and the plane of its orbit, extended outwards to form a great circle in the celestial sphere, is known as the ecliptic. So the tilt of the Earth would be the obliquity, and then the ecliptic would be, if you imagine, if you were to like draw a line around the middle, the center of the equator, and then you were to stretch that line out into a plane that bisected the middle of the Earth at the plane of the equator, that would be the ecliptic. Astronomers also speak of the celestial equator, which is an extension of the Earth's equator into the celestial sphere. The celestial equator is today inclined at about 23.5 degrees to the ecliptic because the Earth's axis is inclined at 23.5 degrees to the vertical. This angle, termed the obliquity of the ecliptic, is not fixed and immutable for all time. On the contrary, as we saw in chapter 11 in relation to the dating of the Andean city of Tiwanaku, it is subject to constant, though very slow, oscillations. These occur across a range of slightly less than 3 degrees, rising closest to the vertical at 22.1 degrees and falling farthest away at 24.5 degrees. A full cycle, you don't need to remember the exact numbers, just kind of try to draw a picture of it in your head, and there will be a few pictures down here.
But if your balance is ever off, you'll know why.
You know what to blame.
Yes.
So rising closest to the vertical at 22.1 degrees and falling farthest away at 24.5 degrees. A full cycle from 24.5 degrees to 22.1 degrees and back again to 24.5 degrees takes approximately 41,000 years to complete. So our fragile planet nods and spins while soaring along its orbital path. The orbit takes a year and the spin takes a day, and the nod has a cycle of 41,000 years. The wild celestial dance seems to be going on as we skip and skim and dive through eternity, and we feel the tug of contradictory urges to fall into the sun on the one hand, to make a break for the outer darkness on the other. Recondite influences. The sun's gravitational domain, in the inner circles of which the Earth is held captive, is now known to extend more than 15 trillion miles into space, almost halfway to the nearest star. Check the 15 trillion miles is equivalent to 15,000 billion miles. Its pull upon our planet is therefore immense. While also affecting us is the gravity of the other planets with which we share the solar system. Each of these exerts an attraction which tends to draw the Earth out of its regular orbit around the sun. The planets are of different sizes, however, and revolve around the sun at different speeds. The combined gravitational influence they are able to exert thus changes over time in complex but predictable ways, and the orbit changes its shape constantly in response. Since the orbit is an ellipse, these changes affect its degree of elongation, known technically as its eccentricity. So, in other words, the orbit of the Earth isn't just, even if it's not a perfect circle, it's an ellipse. Well, it's not a perfect ellipse either. That changes based on the position of the other planets, the position of the sun relative to all these different things are all creating dynamics that are creating tensions against each other and affecting the rotation and the movement of the Earth, and by extension then our perspective from on the Earth looking at the solar system and the galaxy as we travel through it. This varies. So the eccentricity, or the degree of elongation of the orbit, varies from a low value close to 0 when the orbit approaches the form of a perfect circle to a high value of about 6% when it is at its most elongated and elliptical. There are other forms of planetary influence too. Thus, though no explanation has been yet forthcoming, it is known that shortwave radio frequencies are disturbed when Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars line up. And in this connection, evidence has also emerged, quote, of a strange and unexpected correlation between the positions of Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars in their orbits around the sun and violent electrical disturbances in the Earth's upper atmosphere. This would seem to indicate that the planets and the sun share in a cosmic electric balance mechanism that extends 1 billion miles from the center of our solar system. Such an electrical balance is not accounted for in current astrophysical theories. That's a quote from the New York Times, April 15, 1951. So here's a for those of you who are watching, here's a bit of a diagram here. So the pole of the ecliptic and the plane of orbit, and then the variation in the obliquity of the pole. So you can see the Earth is not it's not perfectly vertical on its poles. It's slightly tilted, and then as it's tilted, it as it rotates, it forms like a little circle up here. If you were to draw a line straight through the middle of it, so it's wobbling on its axis and it's tilted on its axis, and so that means if you were to run like a rod straight through the center of the Earth from pole to pole, that rod pointing up into the sky is going to draw a little circle as the Earth rotates. If that helps you visualize anything.
Yeah, I think I had the visuals pretty much covered over in the small window over here for the fans.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Appreciate that. Make sure you guys are watching Steven and not everything else.
Yeah, not this jerk-off's diagrams over here, whoever this guy is.
Yeah. Cooper says this is some real nerd shit, Matt. Yeah, if you guys came here expecting anything but nerd shit, then joke's on you.
This is stuff that me and Coop just kind of already sort of know, but you know, we'll play along, right, Coop?
Okay, so then the pole of the ecliptic and relative to the pole of the Earth. This is just kind of documenting the entire solar system, the way that it all relates to each other. If you imagine like this obviously this is a two-dimensional depiction of a three-dimensional uh, uh, network of objects. So just imagine this and this being like you're looking at an angle kind of down onto a flat plane here. And the sun is in the middle of the plane, and you imagine the pole of the ecliptic being a rod pushed through the sun from the bottom pole to the north pole of the sun. So then the pole of the Earth is going to be at an angle relative to the pole of the ecliptic. All of this is um, you have to understand the this mechanism. You don't have to memorize the mechanism. You just have to be able to kind of visualize it, because there's more information to build on top of this that you'll want to understand later on.
I just want to hereby vouch that as a Christian YouTube channel, that this is, in fact, the entire solar system. As Matthew said, it ends with Earth. There ain't nothing else past that.
That's right.
That's the entire solar system right there.
Yes. Good Christian men that we are.
Yes.
Note the caption, inner planets of the solar system. Okay, so back to Hancock. The New York Times, from which the above report is taken, does not attempt to clarify matters further. Its writers are probably unaware of just how much they sound like Berosus, the Chaldean historian, astronomer and seer of the 3rd century BC, who made the deep study of the omens he believed would presage the final destruction of the world. He concluded, I, Berosus, interpreter of Belus, I'm going to start calling myself I, Matthew, interpreter of Belus, affirmed that all that Earth inherits will be consigned to flame when the 5 planets assemble in Cancer, so arranged in one row that a straight line may pass through their spheres. Close quote. A conjunction of 5 planets that can be expected to have profound gravitational effects will take place on the 5th of May in the year 2000. Remember, this was written in 1995. When Neptune, Uranus, Venus, Mercury, and Mars will align with Earth on the other side of the sun, setting up a sort of cosmic tug of war. Let us also note that the modern astrologers who have charted the Mayan date for the end of the 5th sun calculate that there will be a most peculiar arrangement of planets at that time. Indeed, an arrangement so peculiar that, quote, it can only occur once in 45,200 years. From this extraordinary pattern, we might well expect an extraordinary effect. And that was a quote from a book down here, you can see. No one in his or her right mind would rush to accept such a proposition. Nevertheless, it cannot be denied that multiple influences, many of which we do not fully understand, appear to be at work within our solar system. Among these influences, that of our own satellite, the moon, is particularly strong. Earthquakes, for example, occur more often when the moon is full or when the Earth is between the sun and the moon. When the moon is new or between the sun and the Earth, when the moon crosses the meridian of the affected locality, and when the moon is closest to the Earth on its orbit. Indeed, when the moon reaches this latter point, when it's closest to the Earth on its orbit, technically referred to as its perigee, its gravitational attraction increases by about 6%. This happens once every 27 1/3 days. The tidal pull that it exerts on these occasions affects not only the great movements of our oceans, but those of the reservoirs of hot magma penned within the Earth's thin crust, which has been described as resembling a paper bag filled with honey or molasses, swinging along at a rate of more than 1,000 miles per hour in equatorial rotation and more than 66,000 miles an hour in orbit. That's a great thought. Imagining the Earth's crust as a paper bag holding within it molasses or honey as it's spinning super fast and traveling in orbit really, really fast. Makes you wonder, it is a wonder then that the Earth's crust isn't just exploding all the time, that, there isn't just hot magma spewing out of the Earth all the time. The wobble of a deformed planet. All this circular motion, of course, creates immense centrifugal forces, and these, as Sir Isaac Newton demonstrated in the 17th century, cause the Earth's, quote, paper bag to bulge outwards at the equator. The corollary is a flattening at the poles. In consequence, our planet deviates slightly from the form of a perfect sphere and is more accurately described as an oblate spheroid. So since you could just imagine, like, if you had a perfectly round paper bag, somehow just imagine perfectly round paper bag, and it's spinning really, really fast, it's going to make the inside of it bulge out more, which is going to pull the poles down. So it's going to be, instead of being perfectly circular, it's going to be flat, kind of flattened and more of a spheroid.
I remember in elementary school, they had us take like a long strip of paper and like connect it with tape.
Mm-hmm.
So it was circular, and then poke a pencil through it, and then take the pencil and like rub it like you were trying to start a fire with like this back and forth.
Uh-huh.
And then and just kind of take a look at like what the circle looked like. And they had us it was homework. We had to do it for millions and billions of years, and we're supposed to report back to Sister Mary Frances. No, I'm kidding. They had us do it very quickly to illustrate the point that the Earth probably looks pretty fucked up.
Yeah.
I'm not plugged in. I'm an asshole.
What do you mean?
No, I'm not plugged in.
Say something?
Oh, something.
Oh, okay, there.
Yes.
Oh, you just changed your microphone. I see.
Yeah.
I could hear you just fine. You sounded fine.
Thank goodness.
Okay. So the Earth is more accurately described as an oblate spheroid. Its radius.
I'm sorry. I wanted to acknowledge this very quickly, though. Cooper had just used a word in the chat that no one in the history, I don't think, of the show has ever used this term, which was gist. He asked for the gist of something.
Oh.
I don't think we've ever done like a sort of a concise, like there's never been any effort to be concise.
Yeah.
Either in the chat or on the show. And it was just
never.
It was interesting. I saw that. It was like, what's the gist? Like, gist.
We don't do gists here.
We've done gists.
We do elaborate rambles. Okay. So the Earth's radius at the equator, 3,963.374 miles, is about 14 miles longer than its polar radius, 3,949.921 miles. So the Earth around the equator is further than the Earth around the poles. For billions of years, the flattened poles and the bulging equator have been engaged in a covert mathematical interaction with the recondite influence of gravity. Quote, because the Earth is flattened, explains one authority. We're gonna put the right words together. We're gonna get demonetized. Oh no.
We're right.
The moon's the tend on the end of that is important. Because the Earth is flattened, explains one authority, the moon's gravity tends to tilt the Earth's axis so that it becomes perpendicular to the moon's orbit. And to a lesser extent, the same is true for the sun. At the same time, the equatorial bulge, the extra mass distributed around the equator, acts like the rim of a gyroscope to keep the Earth steady on its axis. Year in, year out, on a planetary scale, it is this gyroscopic effect that prevents the tug of the sun and the moon from radically altering the Earth's axis of rotation. The pull these two bodies jointly exert is, however, sufficiently strong to force the axis to precess, which means that it wobbles slowly in a clockwise direction opposite to that of the Earth's spin. This important motion is our planet's characteristic signature within the solar system. Anyone who has ever set a top spinning should be able to understand it without much difficulty. A top, after all, is simply another type of gyroscope. Its full uninterrupted spin, it stands upright. But the moment its axis is deflected from the vertical, it begins to exhibit a second behavior, a slow and obstinate reverse wobble around a great circle. This wobble, which is precession, changes the direction in which the axis points, while keeping constant its new tilted angle. A second analogy, somewhat different in approach, may help to clarify matters a little further. First, envisage the Earth floating in space, inclined at approximately 23.5 degrees to the vertical, and spinning around on its axis once every 24 hours. Envisage this axis as a massively strong pivot, or axle, passing through the center of the Earth, exiting via the north and south poles, and extending outwards from there in both directions. This is like the image I showed back there, and I said, imagine a rod being pushed through from north to south on the pole, or north and south pole on the Earth. Imagine that you are a giant striding through the solar system with orders to carry out a specific task. Imagine approaching the tilted Earth, which, because of your great size, now looks no bigger to you than a mill wheel. Imagine reaching out and grasping the two ends of the extended axis. So you've got two ends of the extended axis, the Earth is in between. You're grabbing the two ends of it. And imagine yourself slowly beginning to inner rotate them, pushing one end, pulling the other, like this. The Earth was already spinning when you arrived. Your orders, therefore, are not to get involved in its axial rotation, but rather to impart to it its other motion, that slow clockwise wobble called precession. To fulfill this commission, you will have to push the northern tip of the extended axis up and around a great circle in the northern celestial hemisphere, while at the same time pulling the southern tip around an equally large circle in the southern celestial hemisphere. This will involve a slow, swiveling, pedaling motion with your hands and shoulders. Be warned, however, the mill wheel of the Earth is heavier than it looks, so much heavier, in fact, that it's going to take you 25,776 years to turn the two tips of its axis through one full precessional cycle, at the end of which they will be aiming at the same points in the celestial sphere as when you arrived.
I don't know if I knew that it did that.
I didn't either when I read this.
Holy shit. So, okay. Yep. No.
You visualizing it?
Yeah, I'm just like, yeah, and like sort of like what it means.
So the Earth is
yeah. Well, I meant like what it means for like sort of, like
the implications of it.
Yeah.
It's like the Earth. So the Earth is moving in orbit. The Earth is rotating as it's moving in orbit. The Earth is tilted, and then it's also wobbling while it's rotated and tilted. But that wobble is consistent and predictable. So it's like it's drawing. It's like it's drawing little circles. Like the rod that goes through from north to south pole is pointing up in the air, and it's drawing little circles that are going around in circles.
That's I mean, is that a function? Is that the same thing? It's been such a long time since fucking physics, but like, is that what's the phenomenon when the fucking like the bicycle wheel just starts spinning on the back of the car, or if you had like a unicycle, like a bicycle wheel and like a spoke on a string, like it would start to kind of do. Is that the same motion? One of you fucking nerds in there?
I don't. Yeah, one of the nerds is going to have to weigh in. I don't. Yeah. I'm too smart for that kind of
thing.
I'm
way too
smart to know that.
Yeah, I was making six figures as an engineer, so I don't want to hear any of this shit. I forgot more than you knew about.
You're a professional nerd.
That's goddamn right.
We need input from the hobbyist nerds.
I have no idea how I got a job in engineering. All right.
Oh, they're coming.
I wish.
Oh, and by the way, now that you've started the job, we may as well tell you that you're never going to be allowed to leave. As soon as one precessional cycle is over, another must begin. And another, and another, and another, and so on endlessly forever and ever and ever. You can think of this, if you like, as one of the basic mechanisms of the solar system, or if you prefer, as one of the fundamental commandments of the divine will. Here's where you get, if you've ever read any Graham Hancock, he likes to, he's very dramatic in his writing, and he likes to insert lots of drama in the writing. So here's kind of a visualization of precession. So all these little scribble things here, those are all. This is originally a color photo in a book, but it's been photocopied into a PDF. So all of these here are fuck, I just forgot the name of what were they called? Constellations. Yeah. So you can see this is the Earth.
The Big Dipper, kid. You can see the dipper right there.
So you got the Earth going around here. Here is the rod going through from north to south, and it's drawing this circle very, very slowly right here as it travels around this here. That circle is something that you can that ancient astronomers were able to track. They identified this. This is what's amazing to me, is that ancient astronomers identified these cycles and tracked them across thousands and thousands of years. that was one of the first things that really made me start being like, okay, modern people are still barely wrapping their minds around this. And ancient people had built entire schools of thought around this concept. So this whole idea that these are a bunch of primitive bumpkins in the past, that really takes a hit with this.
Yeah,
So,
like this isn't a matter of just like you're going to need to take the night shift. It's like there's like thousands and thousands and thousands of night shifts to be accounted for across generations.
Right. Yeah. So, because we're talking a 26,000 year cycle. So, like, think of how much observation it would take you to figure out a pattern that then you extrapolate out to a 26,000 year cycle.
Yeah. But can you imagine kind of like stumbling upon the idea of like these phenomenon that may exist and then just being like, all right, so let's figure it out. Do you want to figure it out? Yeah. Okay. That sounds good. I've got dinner with the in-laws at 8 though. So you think, you know what I mean?
I could give you a couple hours, but then I got to run.
They do the first couple calculations and they see the scale of like what they're dealing with. They're just like, fuck.
So for here as an illustration, 13,000 years ago, the North Pole pointed toward Vega, as it will do again 12,500 years from now. Today, the North Pole points toward Polaris. So our North Star, quote unquote, has not always been the North Star. And one day it will no longer be the North Star. So this is the North Pole is progressing or is precessing its way through the galaxy, and eventually will be pointing at a different North Star. In the process, little by little, as you slowly sweep the extended axis around the heavens, its two tips will point to one star after another in the polar latitudes of the southern celestial hemisphere, and sometimes, of course, to empty space, and to one star after another in the polar latitudes of the northern celestial hemisphere. We're talking here about a kind of musical chairs among the circumpolar stars. And what keeps everything in motion is the Earth's axial precession, a motion driven by giant gravitational and gyroscopic forces that is regular, predictable, and relatively easy to work out with the aid of modern equipment. Thus, for example, the northern pole star is presently Alpha Ursa Minoris, which we know as Polaris. But computer calculations enable us to state with certainty that in 3000 BC, Alpha Draconis occupied the pole position. At the time of the Greeks, the northern pole star was Beta Ursa Minoris, and in AD 14,000, it will be Vega. A great secret of the past.
Before you do that one, this is my question. Let's see where. Okay, so if like this is the sun, and so the Earth is on some kind of fucking tilt, and this is January, blah 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 blah, back to January.
Mm-hmm.
That means that basically, well, wait, I don't know how extreme the difference is. It would just be a difference of like here to here, as it's drawing a circle, right? Okay, I'm just trying to think
like I didn't follow what.
Yeah, so like so if this is the axis is typically at like 23, it's making kind of a circle like this. Okay, so it's okay. It's not. Yeah, it's not super. All right, it's not as extreme as I thought. Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to work that out on the internet live.
Yeah. Andrew says, Matt, food for thought. Perhaps humans really did live hundreds of thousands of years a long time ago, and that's how they noticed the precessional changes. That's a thought that it occurred to me. The other thought with me here was that the other thing that I thought of is that perhaps this is part of what you see throughout like every ancient pagan religion, and then in the Bible as well. You see this narrative of divine beings coming to mankind and giving knowledge to mankind. And the pagan side of it says that it was the most high God who was the evil tyrant who was hiding stuff from the humans. And thank goodness to Prometheus for bringing this knowledge to humanity. They saved humanity because they want to work on the side of humanity against the evil tyrant, the most high God. The Genesis narrative flips that on its head, and the Book of Enoch narrative as well. It flips that on its head, and it says actually those divine beings were bringing that knowledge to humanity so that humanity would self-destruct, because they were they hate humanity and they want humanity to destroy itself. So they're giving unearned knowledge to humanity. So perhaps this is a technology that was introduced to humanity by some kind of divine being that told them. Okay. A great secret of the past. It will not hurt to remind ourselves of some of the fundamental data concerning the movements of the Earth and its orientation in space. It tilts at about 23.5 degrees to the vertical, an angle from which it can vary by as much as 1.5 degrees on either side over periods of 41,000 years. It completes a full precessional cycle once every 25,776 years. It spins on its own axis once every 24 hours. It orbits the sun once every 365 days. Actually, 365.2422 days. The most important influence on its seasons is the angle at which the rays of the sun strike it at various points on its orbital path. So you can see this is just illustrating the tilt, and as it moves back and forth on the degrees of the axis on the vertical. So the equinoxes and the solstices. Let us also note that there are 4 crucial astronomical moments in the year, marking the official beginning of each of the 4 seasons. These moments, or cardinal points, which were of immense importance to the ancients, are the winter and the summer solstices, and the spring and autumn equinoxes. In the northern hemisphere, the winter solstice, the shortest day, falls on 21 December, and the summer solstice, the longest day, on 21 June. In the southern hemisphere, on the other hand, everything is literally upside down. There, winter begins on 21 June and summer on 21 December. The equinoxes, by contrast, are the 2 points in the year on which night and day are of equal length all over the planet. Once again, however, as with the solstices, the date that marks the onset of spring in the northern hemisphere, 20 March, marks that of autumn in the southern hemisphere, and the date for the onset of autumn in the northern hemisphere, 22 September, marks the onset of spring in the southern hemisphere. Like the subtler variations of the seasons, all this is brought about by the benevolent obliquity of the planet. The northern hemisphere's summer solstice falls at that point in an orbit when the North Pole is aimed most directly towards the sun. 6 months later, the winter solstice marks that point when the North Pole is aimed most directly away from the sun. And logically enough, the reason that day and night are of exactly equal length all over the planet on the spring and autumn equinoxes is that these mark the 2 points when the Earth's axis of rotation lies broadside onto the sun. Let us now take a look at a strange and beautiful phenomenon of celestial mechanics. The phenomenon is known as the precession of the equinoxes. It has rigid and repetitive mathematical qualities that can be analyzed and predicted precisely. It is, however, extremely difficult to observe and even harder to measure accurately without sophisticated instrumentation. In this, there may lie a clue to one of the great mysteries of the past. Chapter 29, the first crack in an ancient code.
Well, we can take this in the action to wish Coop a happy belated birthday, June 1st, right on the old summer solstice.
Yeah.
My favorite quote about birthdays.
He may have been, if he'd been born in another time, he may have been worshipped as a god.
Yeah, he honestly fucking should be.
He may still be, yeah.
I'll never forget that. Just curious, I know we have people in like Australia who watch or that watched at one point. Are you guys just like, I can't wait for it to be winter and take out my swimmies? Like you don't just call it. Why wouldn't you just call it summer? You call it summer? Like I'm curious about this.
Yeah, why can't summer just be when it's cold to all y'all down under? Like summer's when it's hot here and it's when it's cold there.
It's like, like fucking it's my same thing with the time zones. I need everything standardized.
Steven has a simple mind, so he needs
Yeah. I just need clean lines that make sense. There's so much else that makes sense. So save your bandwidth for that.
Okay. Let's see here. Pull this back up. Move this over.
Move it over.
Move this over.
Yeah, move that all. Oh, you're a one. See,
okay.
Matthew is transitioning himself in these age of transitions. Matthew is doing a little bit of removing in his where he is taking away one monitor, and he's now one monitor. He used to be a 2-monitor boy.
Yeah. Yeah, this is it's difficult on me. So you guys should appreciate the sacrifices that I make for you. Okay. Chapter 29, the first crack in an ancient code. The plane of the Earth's orbit, projected outwards to form a great circle in the celestial sphere, is known as the ecliptic. Ringed around the ecliptic in a starry belt that extends approximately 7 degrees north and south are the 12 constellations of the zodiac: Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpius, Sagittarius, Capricornus, Aquarius, and Pisces. These constellations are irregular in size, shape, and distribution. Nevertheless, and one assumes by chance, their spacing around the rim of the ecliptic is sufficiently even to bestow a sense of cosmic order upon the diurnal risings and settings of the sun. Just something just popped into my head that I meant to say at the very beginning. Speaking of the Southern Hemisphere, I had a very interesting conversation yesterday with a new friend of mine, a guy named Mr. Patriarch, who has got a very good YouTube channel. He's very much aligned with a lot of he's kind of recovering libertarian, Orthodox. We have lots of crossover, and he and we talked for almost 2.5 hours yesterday on all kinds of different stuff related to the Enlightenment and the flaws in liberalism and left wing and right wing relationships to aesthetics, all kinds of different stuff. So if you guys want to see an interesting conversation covering a lot of the stuff that we've talked about here before, but even there was a few things we got into that I don't think I've ever really talked about before. You can just go look at his YouTube channel, Mr. Patriarch. I'll put a link in the description of the video here after we're done. And
if you like what you hear, then let us know, and maybe we'll have him on the show one of these days.
Yeah, he told me that he's from South Africa, so I assumed I was talking to a South African guy, but I was actually talking to an African American because he was born in Alaska and moved to South Africa.
Whoa, dude, don't just fucking say that like, oh yeah, I was talking to a black guy who was obviously born in Alaska. Like, don't fucking just
I didn't say black.
gloss over that. Oh,
I didn't say black.
Okay,
I said African American.
African American. Lord,
yeah,
Jesus.
he's African American. Like he's kind of like he's like the inverse Elon Musk. He's not the photo negative Elon Musk, but he's the inverse
Elon Musk.
Okay, Steven, do you have a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil?
Son of a gun, maybe.
I know that you need to you need little colorful pictures to be able to understand some of this stuff. So
I'm gonna get it.
Okay. Yeah, it would popular liberty. Wouldn't he be an American African? Yeah, I guess you could do that too, but it doesn't make the joke as good. So that's why I didn't do that.
I fell for that hook, line, and fucking sinker. I knew Matthew knew I was gonna fucking do that.
Okay.
Do I have a piece of paper?
Oh yeah. What's up? You have to start really emphasizing your T's.
And of course, he was born in Alaska, which is where they should stay.
Sorry. Okay. African Americans, the white ones.
Yes. So to picture what's involved here, do the following. 1, mark a dot in the center of a blank sheet of paper. Mark your dot. 2, draw a circle around the dot about 1/2 inch away from it. 3, enclose that circle in a second, larger circle. The dot represents the sun. The smaller of the 2 concentric circles represents the Earth's orbit. The larger circle represents the rim of the ecliptic. Around the perimeter of this larger circle, therefore, you should now draw 12 boxes, spacing them evenly to represent the constellations of the zodiac. This might take you a little while, so I'm going to keep going. Since there are 360 degrees in a circle, each constellation can be considered to occupy a space of 30 degrees along the ecliptic. The dot is the sun. Wait a second here. Why is he repeating himself? Weird. Okay, so
because obviously when this guy wrote this book, he was tripping fucking balls. So I imagine
he may have been.
I imagine that's probably a good explanation.
Okay, so 360 degrees in a circle. So each constellation can be considered to occupy a space of 30 degrees around the circle because 360 divided by 12 is 30. So the dot is the sun. The inner of the two concentric circles is the Earth's orbit. We know that the Earth travels on this orbit in an anti-clockwise direction from the west towards the east, and that every 24 hours it also makes one complete rotation around its own axis, again from the west toward the east. From these two movements, two illusions result. One, each day as the planet turns from west to east, the sun, which is of course a fixed point, appears to move across the sky from east to west. Roughly every 30 days, as the spinning Earth journeys along its orbital path around the sun itself slowly appears to pass through one after another of the 12 zodiacal constellations, which are also fixed points. And again, it appears to be moving in an east-west direction. On any particular day of the year, in other words, corresponding on our diagram to any point we care to choose around the inner concentric circle making the Earth's orbit, it is obvious that the sun will lie between an observer on the Earth and one of the 12 zodiacal constellations. I like how you drew it on that side of it. On that day, there you go. On that day, what the observer will see, so long as he or she is up and about well before dawn, is the sun rising in the east in the portion of the sky occupied by that particular constellation. Beneath the clear, are you visualizing this? Can you see what he's describing?
Me personally?
Yeah.
I don't know about his explanation of it exactly.
So did you do the 12 boxes around the thing?
Yeah, but I draw like a fucking serial killer. Like I have no, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me see if there's that picture doesn't really. Let me, just for the sake of this, let me see if I can pull up an image that will really make this clear for people who potentially are having a hard time visualizing it.
I definitely have the sun rising in the east, setting in the west portion.
That part makes sense to you?
Definitely.
Okay, good job.
Thank you.
Let's see here. What could I look up that would make this? Let's see. Constellations. Okay, here we go. Oh, where'd it go? Oh, I hate it when that happens. Why does this image? I want this image to open in a new tab. There we go. All right, so now I'm going to share Chrome.
Yeah, I think I've never in my life been, if someone's just like, here's how to visualize something. Like I've never followed it.
Yeah.
I've always just been like, hey, just say the thing and I'm going to make up my own weird thing. And it's going to, I'm going to figure it out. But whatever. Yeah.
So are you seeing this here?
Yeah.
Okay. So you have the sun in the middle.
Yeah.
And then you have the Earth's position in the orbit.
Yeah.
And so then from where you are on the sun,
yep,
as you move throughout the month,
yep,
each of these here is a different of the 12 houses of the Zodiac.
Yeah.
So it will look like, from the perspective of the sun, when the sun rises, for someone on Earth, rather, it'll look like when the sun is rising, it'll look like it's rising from within the middle of this constellation.
Will look like it's rising from within the middle.
So like if you were looking at the sunrise and so imagine it's night and you're looking at the constellation Virgo.
Yeah.
As you're looking at it, eventually as the day starts, as the night sky starts to turn into morning, as the dawn starts to light up and then the sun peaks up over the horizon, the sun will peak up over the horizon from within, apparently from within the constellation you were looking at. Now, the constellation itself is much further away than the sun, but it's like the sun is between you and that constellation. This is what, but and that gradually precesses through each of these here like that. That's the sort of thing that he's trying to describe. So you can visualize that. If you're not following yet, it's fine. We'll keep going, and more will make sense as we continue. I don't know why it does this. I want it to do this. There we go. Okay, so beneath the clear and unpolluted heavens of the ancient world, it is easy to understand how human beings might have felt reassured by regular celestial motions such as these. It's equally easier to understand why the 4 cardinal points of the year, the spring and autumn equinoxes, the winter and summer solstices, should everywhere have been accorded immense significance. Even greater significance was accorded to the conjunction of these cardinal points with the zodiacal constellations. But most significant of all was the constellation in which the sun was observed to rise on the morning of the spring or vernal equinox. Because of the Earth's axial precession, the ancients discovered that this constellation was not fixed or permanent for all time, but that the honor of housing or carrying the sun on the day of the vernal equinox circulated very, very slowly among all the constellations of the zodiac. So again, if you imagine you're sitting there and you're tracking when the sun rises on the horizon every single day of the year, you would notice that it's precessing very gradually, cyclically through each of the houses of each of these constellations. The most important day of the year to them was the spring equinox. And what they would have noticed is that if you wrote down every morning or every time you have the spring equinox in the morning, if you wrote down which zodiacal constellation the sun arose from within, it would have not always been the same house it would not have been the same constellation. Very, very gradually it would move from one constellation to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. So,
and then someone was just like, I bet this takes about 25,000 years.
Somehow they figured that out. Yeah. That's how long the cycle takes. So in the words of Giorgio de Santillana, the sun's position amongst the constellations at the vernal equinox was the pointer that indicated the hours of the precessional cycle. Very long hours indeed, the equinoctial sun occupying each zodiacal constellation for almost 2,200 years. So for 2,200 years, every spring equinox, the sun will rise from within one constellation. And after 2,200 years, it will have precessed all the way through that constellation into the next one. And then it takes 2,200 years for the next one. So 2,200 years is almost like it's like one segment of a great year. It's like 1 month of a great year. The direction. What's up, Mr. Patriarch? We were just shouting you out. Mr. Patriarch's now in the chat. He must have heard us talking about him. And Stephen, the African American, has showed up.
Yes, hello, American African.
The direction of the Earth's slow axial precession is clockwise, i.e., east to west, and thus in opposition to the direction of the planet's annual path around the sun. In relation to the constellations of the zodiac lying fixed in space, this causes the point at which the spring equinox occurs to move stubbornly along the ecliptic in the opposite direction to the yearly course direction, which the vernal point shifts as a result of precession of the sun. That is against the right sequence of the zodiacal signs, which is like Taurus, Aries, Pisces, Aquarius, instead of Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, Taurus. So this is just illustrating this here, that the annual path of the sun through the 12 houses of the zodiac goes this way. The vernal point shifts every 2,200 years going this direction. During the, let's see here, is this something? Okay, yeah. During the course of each year, the Earth's movement along its orbit causes the stellar background against which the sun is seen to rise to change from month to month. Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, etc., etc. At present, on the vernal equinox, the sun rises due east between Pisces and Aquarius. So for the last approximately 2,000 years, on the vernal equinox, the sun rises in Pisces, which is interesting because the fish was the symbol of Christianity, and Pisces is the symbol of is the fish. So, and this actually, it goes back. So, what was it? It would have been 2000 to 0, not 2000 BC to 0, but 4000 to 2000 approximately was, if I'm remembering right, that was Taurus, which is also when you had like Crete and the Minoan civilization, whose symbol was the bull, and there was all kinds of bull worship all around the world. So it corresponds to that. The effect of precession is to cause the vernal point to be reached fractionally earlier in the orbit each year, with the result that it very gradually shifts through all 12 houses of the zodiac, spending 2,160 years in each sign and making a complete circuit in 25,920 years. The direction of this processional drift, in opposition to the annual path of the sun, is Leo, Cancer, Gemini, Taurus, Aries, Pisces, Aquarius. To give one example, the age of Leo, i.e. the 2,160 years during which the sun on the vernal equinox rose against the stellar background of the constellation of Leo, lasted from 10,970 until 8,810 BC. We live today in the astrological no man's land at the end of the age of Pisces, on the threshold of the new age of Aquarius. Traditionally, these times of transition between one age and the next have been regarded as ill-omened.
Everything goes, oh no, okay, never mind. Everything usually goes great.
Right. That, in a nutshell, is the meaning of the precession of the equinoxes. And, in a nutshell. And that is exactly what is involved in the motion of the dawning of the age of Aquarius. The famous line from the musical Hair refers to the fact that every year for the past 2,000 years or so, the sun has risen in Pisces on the vernal equinox. The age of Pisces, however, is now approaching its end, and the vernal sun will soon pass out of the sector of the fish and begin to rise against the new background of Aquarius. The 25,776-year cycle of precession is the engine that drives this majestic celestial juggernaut along its never-ending tour of the heavens. But the details of exactly how precession moves the equinoctial points from Pisces into Aquarius, and thence onward around the zodiac, are also worth knowing. Remember that the equinoxes occur on the only two occasions in the year when the Earth's tilted axis lies broadside on to the sun. These are when the sun rises due east all over the world, and day and night are of equal length. Because the Earth's axis is slowly but surely precessing in a direction opposite to that of its own orbit, the points at which it lies broadside onto the sun must occur fractionally earlier in the orbit each year. These annual changes are so small as to be almost imperceptible. A 1 degree shift along the ecliptic, equivalent to the width of your little finger held up to the horizon, requires approximately 72 years to complete. So if you held up your little finger and you looked out toward the horizon, that distance out on the horizon of the width of your little finger would take about 72 years for the sun to move across the horizon that far. That's how slowly it's moving. However, as De Santillana points out, such minute changes add up in just under 2,200 years to a 30-degree passage through a complete house of the zodiac, and in just under 26,000 years to a 360-degree passage through a complete cycle of precession. When did the ancients first work out precession? In the answer to this question lies a great secret and mystery of the past. Before we try to penetrate the mystery and to learn the secret, we should acquaint ourselves with the official line. The Encyclopedia Britannica is as good a repository as any of the conventional historical wisdom, and this is what it tells us about a scholar named Hipparchus, the supposed discoverer of precession. Hipparchus, also spelled Hipparchos, born in Nicaea after 127 BC, died after 127 BC. Greek astronomer and mathematician who discovered the precession of the equinoxes. This notable discovery was the result of painstaking observations worked upon by an acute mind. Hipparchus observed the positions of the stars and then compared his results to those of Timacharis of Alexandria about 150 years earlier, and with even earlier observations made in Babylonia. He discovered that the celestial longitudes were different, and that this difference was of a magnitude exceeding that attributable to errors of observation. He therefore proposed precession to account for the size of the difference, and he gave a value of 45 or 46 seconds of arc for annual changes. This is very close to the figure of 50.274 seconds of arc accepted today, close quote. First, a point of terminology. Seconds of arc are the smallest subdivisions of a degree of arc. There are 60 of these arc seconds in 1 arc minute, 60 minutes in 1 degree, and 360 degrees in the full circle of Earth's path around the sun. An annual change of 50.274 seconds of arc represents a distance somewhat under 1/60th of 1 degree, so that it takes roughly 72 years, an entire human lifetime, for the equinoctial sun to migrate just 1 degree along the ecliptic. It is because of the observational difficulties entailed in detecting the snail's pace rate of change that the value worked out by Hipparchus in the 2nd century BC is hailed in the Britannica as a notable discovery. Would this discovery seem so notable if it turned out to be a rediscovery? Would the mathematical and astronomical achievements of the Greeks shine so brightly if we could prove that the difficult challenge of measuring precession had been taken up thousands of years before Hipparchus? What if this heavenly cycle, almost 26,000 years long, had been made the object of precise scientific investigations long epochs before the supposed dawn of scientific thought? In seeking answers to such questions, there is much that may be relevant which would never be accepted by any court of law as concrete proof. Let us not accept it either. We have seen that Hipparchus proposed a value of 45 or 46 seconds of arc for 1 year of precessional motion. Let us therefore not attempt to dislodge the Greek astronomer from his pedestal as the discoverer of precession unless we can find a significantly more accurate value recorded in a significantly more ancient source. Of course, there are many potential sources. At this point, however, in the interest of succinctness, we shall limit our inquiry to universal myths. We have already examined one group of myths in detail, the traditions of flood and cataclysm set out in part 4, and we have seen that they possess a range of intriguing characteristics. One, there is no doubt they are immensely old. Take the Mesopotamian flood story, versions of which have been found inscribed on tablets from the earliest strata of Sumerian history around 3000 BC. These tablets, handed down from the dawn of the recorded past, leave no room for doubt that the tradition of a world-destroying flood was ancient even then, and therefore originated long before the dawn. We cannot say how long. The fact remains that no scholar has ever been able to establish a date for the creation of any myth, let alone for these venerable and widespread traditions. In a very real sense, they seem always to have been around, part of the permanent baggage of human culture. 2. The possibility cannot be ruled out that this aura of vast antiquity is not an illusion. On the contrary, we have seen that many of the great myths of cataclysm seem to contain accurate eyewitness accounts of real conditions experienced by humanity during the last ice age. In theory, therefore, these stories could have been constructed at almost the same time as the emergence of our subspecies, Homo sapiens sapiens, perhaps as long as 50,000 years ago. The geological evidence, however, suggests a more recent provenance, and we have identified the epoch 15,000 to 8,000 BC as the most likely. Only then, in the whole of human experience, were there rapid climatic changes on the convulsive scale the myths so eloquently describe. 3. The Ice Age and its tumultuous demise were global phenomena. It is therefore perhaps not surprising that the cataclysm traditions of many different cultures widely scattered around the globe should be characterized by a high degree of uniformity and convergence. 4. What is surprising, however, is that the myths not only describe shared experiences, but that they do so in what appears to be a shared symbolic language. The same literary motifs keep cropping up again and again, the same stylistic props, the same recognizable characters, and the same plots. According to Professor De Santillana, this type of uniformity suggests a guiding hand at work. In Hamlet's Mill, a seminal and original thesis on ancient myth written in collaboration with Hertha von Deckend, professor of the History of Science at Frankfurt University, he argues that universality is in itself a test when coupled with a firm design. When something found, say, in China, turns up also in Babylonian astrological texts, then it must be assumed to be relevant if it reveals a complex of uncommon images which nobody could claim had arisen independently by spontaneous generation. Take the origin of music. Orpheus and his harrowing death may be a poetic creation born in more than one instance in diverse places. But when characters who do not play the lyre but blow pipes get themselves flayed alive for various absurd reasons and their identical end is rehearsed on several continents, then we feel we've got hold of something, for such stories cannot be linked by internal sequence. And when the Pied Piper turns up both in the German myth of Hamelin and in Mexico long before Columbus, and is linked in both places to certain attributes like the color red, it can hardly be a coincidence. Likewise, when one finds numbers like 108 or 9 times 13 reappearing under several multiples in the Vedas, in the temples of Angkor, in Babylon, in Heraclitus' dark utterances, and also in the Norse Valhalla, it is not accident. Connecting the great universal myths of cataclysm, is it possible that such coincidences that cannot be coincidences, and accidents that cannot be accidents, could denote the global influence of an ancient, though as yet unidentified, guiding hand. If so, could it be the same hand, during and after the last ice age, which drew the series of highly accurate and technically advanced world maps reviewed in Part 1? And might not that same hand have left its ghostly fingerprints on another body of universal myths? Those concerning the death and resurrection of gods, and great trees around which the earth and heavens turn, and whirlpools, and churns, and drills, and other similar revolving, grinding contrivances. According to Santayana and von Deckend, all such images refer to celestial events, and do so, furthermore, in the refined technical language of an archaic but immensely sophisticated astronomical and mathematical science. This language ignores local beliefs and cults. It concentrates on numbers, motions, measures, overall frames, schemas, on the structure of numbers, on geometry. Where could such a language have come from? Hamlet's Mill is a labyrinth of brilliant but deliberately evasive scholarship and offers us no straightforward answer to this question. Here and there, however, almost with embarrassment, inconclusive hints are dropped. For example, at one point, the authors say that the scientific language or code they believe they have identified is of awe-inspiring antiquity. On another occasion, they pin down the depths of this antiquity more precisely to a period at least, quote, 6,000 years before Virgil. In other words, 8,000 years ago or more. What civilization known to history could have developed and made use of a sophisticated technical language more than 8,000 years ago? The honest answer to this question is none, followed by a frank admission that what is being conjectured is nothing less than a forgotten episode of high technological culture in prehistoric times. Once again, Santayana and von Deckend are elusive when it comes to the crunch, speaking only of the legacy we all owe to some almost unbelievable ancestor civilization that first dared to understand the world as created according to number, measure, and weight. The legacy, it is clear, has to do with scientific thinking and complex information of a mathematical nature. Because it is so extremely old, however, the passage of time has dissipated it. Quote, when the Greeks came upon the scene, the dust of centuries had already settled upon the remains of this great worldwide archaic construction. Yet something of it survived in traditional rites, in myths and fairy tales no longer understood. These are tantalizing fragments of a lost whole. They make one think of those mist landscapes of which Chinese painters are masters, which show here a rock, there a gable, there the tip of a tree, and leave the rest to imagination. Even when the code shall have yielded, when the techniques shall be known, we cannot expect to gauge the thought of these remote ancestors of ours, wrapped as it is in its symbols, since the creating, ordering minds that devise the symbols have vanished forever. What we have here, therefore, are two distinguished professors of the history of science from esteemed universities on both sides of the Atlantic, claiming to have discovered the remnants of a coded scientific language many thousands of years older than the oldest human civilizations identified by scholarship. Moreover, though generally cautious, Santayana and von Deckend also claim to have broken part of that code. This is an extraordinary statement for two serious academics to have made. And so from there, they start getting into comparing some of the different myths. And there was another section here that I wanted to see if we could get into. If you guys are interested in more of this, you could just go get the book and read it yourself. The different patterns and stuff are fascinating, but it was the numbers that I really wanted to get into here. Let me see if I can find the section I was thinking of. It took me several times reading through this to really kind of internalize all of it. And it's really the specific details aren't as important, but the patterns in the details, and recognizing that all these different ancient cultures were telling these stories that hinted toward this type of code. And then there's all kinds of different little unique details within the stories that are clearly not accidental. This is clearly there's some type of communication happening between these ancient cultures, whether they're communicating directly or they're all pointing back to an even earlier tradition that has started to spread out, and it's started to manifest itself differently across, the game of telephone happening over and over and over again. You could keep tracing that back to an original point.
Is that what this word that Nicholas has put in the chat? Like,
Tartaria.
Is that what the missing link is here, Nicholas?
Tartaria is something that someone just mentioned it to me recently, and I started looking at it. I don't know exactly what it is. It's something having to do with architecture and what do you call it? Like symbols within architecture or something like that points to some kind of lost ancient civilization or something to that degree. Something that I wanted to I wrote down as an interesting thing to chase down at some point. There, I've kind of killed some time to see if someone can like comment and explain better what it is. Okay, so I think this was the section that I wanted to get into here. Yeah, okay. So here comes lots of numbers. We'll go for a little bit longer here. What's my dog doing out there? He's going crazy. I hope everything's okay. Oh, well, if it's not, then we'll find out later.
Nothing's okay if Matthew doesn't have his sandwich.
Right. Well, it's still here. So, okay. Chapter 31, the Osiris numbers. Archaeoastronomer Jane B. Sellers, who studied Egyptology at the University of Chicago's Oriental Institute, spends her winters in Portland, Maine, and summers at Ripley Neck, a 19th century enclave downcast on Maine's rocky coast.
Well, she better not say Oriental in either one of those places.
There, she says, the night skies can be as clear as the desert, and no one minds if you read the pyramid texts out loud to the seagulls. One of the few serious scholars to have tested the theory advanced by Santayana and von Deckend in Hamlet's Mill, Sellers has been hailed for having drawn attention to the need to use astronomy, and more particularly precession, for the proper study of ancient Egypt and its religion. In her words, archaeologists by and large lack an understanding of precession, and this affects their conclusions concerning ancient myths, ancient gods, and ancient temple alignments. For astronomers, precession is a well-established fact. Those working in the field of ancient man have a responsibility to attain an understanding of it. Once you start seeing the connections between archaeology and ancient astronomy, that's where it's like this stuff like really comes to life. Because there's all these ancient gigantic buildings, the Sphinx and the pyramids and all these different massive megalithic structures. They all have astronomical implications. They're all clearly made, whether it's to reflect astronomy or to point to astronomy. They're all clearly built by people who had this really deep understanding of astronomy. It is Sellers' contention, eloquently expressed in her recent book, The Death of Gods in Ancient Egypt, that the Osiris myth may have been deliberately encoded with a group of key numbers that are excess baggage as far as the narrative is concerned, but that offer an external calculus or an eternal calculus by which surprisingly exact values can be derived for the following. 1. The time required for the Earth's slow precessional wobble to cause the position of sunrise on the vernal equinox to complete a shift of 1 degree along the ecliptic in relation to the stellar background. 2. The time required for the sun to pass through 1 full zodiacal segment of 30 degrees. 3. The time required for the sun to pass through 2 full zodiacal segments, totaling 60 degrees. 4. The time required to bring about the Great Return, i.e., for the sun to shift 360 degrees along the ecliptic, thus fulfilling 1 complete precessional cycle or great year. In other words, the stories in some of these myths, for example, the Osiris myth, the story is just a vehicle to embed these numbers.
Yes, religion is a communication technology across generations.
Religion is a language. Computing the Great Return. The precessional numbers highlighted by Sellers in the Osiris myth are 360, 72, 30, and 12. Most of them are found in a section of the myth which provides us with biographical details of the various characters.
Nikola Tesla said you can get everything in life done with 2 and 3 or something like that?
It was 3, 6, and 9.
3, 6, and 9. Okay.
Yeah. It was reading this that got me interested in Tesla because he was very clearly onto something. These have been conveniently summarized by E.A. Wallace Budge, formerly keeper of Egyptian antiquities at the British Museum. Quote, the goddess Nut, wife of the sun god Ra, or it's actually Re, I think, was beloved by the god Gabe. When Re discovered the intrigue, he cursed his wife and declared that she should not be delivered of a child in any month of any year. Then the god Thoth, who also loved Nut, played at tables with the moon and won from her 5 whole days. These he joined to the 360 days of which the year then consisted. On the first of these 5 days, Osiris was brought forth, and at the moment of his birth, a voice was heard to proclaim that the Lord of creation was born. Close quote. Elsewhere, the myth informs us that the 300-day year consists of 12 months of 30 days each. And in general, as Sellers observes, phrases are used which prompt simple mental calculations and an attention to numbers. Thus far, we have been provided with 3 of Sellers' precessional numbers, 360, 12, and 30. The 4th number, which occurs later in the text, is by far the most important. As we saw in Chapter 9, the evil deity known as Set led a group of conspirators in a plot to kill Osiris. The number of these conspirators was 72. With this last number in hand, suggests Sellers, we are now in position to boot up and set running an ancient computer program. 12, the number of constellations in the Zodiac. 30, the number of degrees allocated along the ecliptic to each zodiacal constellation. 72, the number of years required for the equinoctial sun to complete a precessional shift of 1 degree along the ecliptic. 360, the total number of degrees in the ecliptic. 72 times 30, which is 2160, or the number of years required for the sun to complete a passage of 30 degrees along the ecliptic, i.e. to pass entirely through any one of the 12 zodiacal constellations. And 2160 times 12, or 360 times 72, which is 25,920, the number of years in any one complete precessional cycle or great year, and thus the total number of years required to bring about the great return. Other figures and combinations of figures also emerge, for example. 36, the number of years required for the equinoctial sun to complete a precessional shift of half a degree along the ecliptic. Or 4,320, the number of years required for the equinoctial sun to complete a precessional shift of 60 degrees, i.e. 2 zodiacal constellations. These, Sellers believes, constitute the basic ingredients of a precessional code which appears again and again with eerie persistence in ancient myths and sacred architecture. In common with much esoteric numerology, it is a code at which it is permissible to shift decimal points to left or right at will, and to make use of almost any conceivable combinations, permutations, multiplications, divisions, and fractions of the essential numbers, all of which relate precisely to the rate of precession of the equinoxes. The preeminent number in the code is 72. To this is frequently added 36, making 108, and it is permissible to multiply 108 by 100 to get 10,800, or to divide it by 2 to get 54, which may then be multiplied by 10 and expressed as 540, or as 54,000, or as 540,000, or as 5.4 million, and so on. Also highly significant is 2,160, the number of years required for the equinoctial point to transit one zodiacal constellation, which is sometimes multiplied by 10 and by factors often, to give 260,000, 216,000, 2.16 million, and so on. And sometimes by 2 to give 4,320, or 43,200, or 432,000, or 4.32 million ad infinition. I've never heard that before.
I mean, either I was waiting for ad infinitum. I want. This is all very interesting. I just want to find like the guy who has dedicated his life to being like, nah, this is all fucking bullshit. I want that so bad. Also, who suggested Luke Smith? I went to because the series, it was what was it called? Not normal. Not what was the not? Damn it! What was the name of that series? Not related. So I put in not Luke Smith, not, and then it auto completed. You're not autistic. And he has like these videos. You are not autistic. I'm not autistic. Like it's just. I mean, there are several other accounts that are posting, but it's just very funny, and I will watch all of them.
Speaking your language.
That's so great.
So what's interesting is you brought up that Tesla quote about 3, 6, and 9.
Yeah.
Look at these significant numbers. So starting with 72, 7 plus 2 is 9.
Yeah, that's why I was
360. 3 plus 6 is 9.
I knew it was something involving 3, and I didn't know if it was like 3 and 2, so that you could get to the point of having 6 and then going from there. or what? But it was, I guess he just said 3, 6, and 9.
All of these here, all of these, so 2160, 2 + 1 + 6 is 9.
Yeah, but
25, 920.
in many ways. So maybe like I'm a little bit smarter than Tesla. It's like, okay, you don't really need 3. You can just do it with 2. Okay. Anyway, neither here nor there. It doesn't matter.
4 + 3 + 2 is 9. You run into that with all of these. These all have the same thing. If you're familiar with the Kali Yuga, you'll recognize the numbers 4.32 million. And then it's interesting, this 43,200, I can't remember exactly where this comes up, but I know that if you take something having to do with the measurements, the dimensions of the Great Pyramid at Giza, you take one of the dimensions or all of the 2 of the dimensions added together or something like that, and you multiply it by 43,200, you get you're able to identify not only the size of the northern hemisphere of the Earth, but you're also able to identify the location on the Earth where the pyramid is. So the pyramid identifies its location on the Earth based on its size and its layout. The building, if you guys want to have your minds blown, just go watch some videos on the numerology involved with the Great Pyramid and the building of it. It's one of the most, just pardon the pun, astronomically mind-blowing buildings ever built, ever created. It was
Devil's advocate. How much of those little phenomenon that come up are just a function of the way that the universe is constructed? Like how much require it was obviously deliberately constructed, but because it was deliberately constructed, like how many other dots connected, that would just connect because of how it was initially positioned without that being the actual intent.
It would be like impossible, essentially. Like, for example, the positioning of the pyramid is within like a fraction of a degree of being perfectly north, south, east, perfectly centered north, south.
Sure.
So just the building of the pyramid in the first place, the actual technology involved in building it so that the point of the pyramid is in the middle of the base, so it's not like lopsided, is incredibly, incredibly difficult. So not only was it just the building of a pyramid without having perfect astronomical alignments would be almost impossible, but to build it perfectly and to have these crazy astronomical alignments built into it, it was obvious that the people who built it understood, number one, where they were on the globe. Number two, they understood that they were on a globe. And what was the other thing? There's one other point, but it was clearly the people who built it had advanced understanding of the shape and the position of the Earth and the movement of the Earth as well. So it would be impossible to have that many coincidences, I think.
Well, this guy has a question.
What's that?
What do you think their complexion was? Were they lighter or darker than your co-host?
I plead the fifth.
There is that's an interesting topic, and one that has been going on my Facebook news feed for probably a decade. By the way,
the
complexion,
the complexion of the people who built the pyramids.
Oh
yeah. He earlier in the book here, we'll leave it at that for today. We're coming up on 2 hours. I just realized. So
yes.
Earlier in the book, he talks about the legends of Viracocha and Quetzalcoatl and some of those legends, and they were described as by the people who came the people who lived in South America and in Central America. They were described as white men who came across the ocean, who they said they came out of the ocean. They were described as white men with blue eyes and red hair. That's
fucking isn't that what that Asha logo shit is about that I barely know about? That seems to be a theme.
I don't even know what Asha logos is.
It's that playlist. I put it in the Discord. I'll put it in
that's
Discord.
right. That's right.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just like man, I forget. I think they removed the first video, by the way, which was a real fucking banger. But but yeah, it was like yeah, it's in the general channel. Supporting listeners group. Subscribe to our.com/Kinko. And yeah, it was a lot of stories like that. A lot of white guys with blue eyes showing up out of the fucking ocean.
Yeah, they and there's interesting parallels too. I think it covers it in Fingerprints of the Gods. There's interesting parallels between, if I remember right, it was the story of Viracocha and now I'm kind of talking out of my ass because I don't remember. There was whichever of the gods. I think it was Viracocha in South America, and I want to say it was Osiris or Thoth in Egypt, where the stories parallel themselves so closely that it seems very likely that they were talking about the same person.
Wait, and you said it was either ancient Egypt and what was the other?
Like South America, like around the
okay, yeah, it was
like
it was some Native American population. Yeah,
yeah.
And
if you look at the way in the best body of water in the world, Lake Titicaca, the way that the locals, the people who are whose heritage goes back just thousands of years, the way that they build their boats, the way they fashion them together with by lashing reeds and stuff together, and the shape of them is like identical to the way that the ancient Egyptians built their boats. They're like the exact same shape. It's the exact same building process, where it's like very clear that these two cultures somehow had a connection to each other. This was a subject that really dominated my mind a couple of years ago, around the time that Hotep Jesus went on Joe Rogan and went and challenged some dogmas of relatively recent history compared to these things. And one thing that he pointed out is that from Africa to South America, there are ocean currents there that if you just plop yourself in the ocean, you'll naturally wind up there. Mm-hmm. And it's well known that the ancient Egyptians had the capacity they built ships, and there's ships that have been found that were buried in around some of the pyramids and stuff that they can tell, shipbuilders can tell based on their construction, that the only reason that they would be built the way that they were is if they weren't just for tootling around in the Mediterranean. They were for out on the open seas, out on the open ocean. So ancient Egyptians thousands of years ago had the capacity for ocean travel. So then the idea that they wouldn't have traveled across to Central America, even just, I don't know, 6,000 years ago is kind of preposterous. So yeah, so this is something that I've always found super interesting. And then someone just introduced me to the channel Bright Insight, this guy that was just on Joe Rogan recently talking about the Eye of Africa in Mauritania, the structure that's like concentric circles that looks very much like the way Atlantis was described. I started going down a rabbit hole with that channel recently. I'd really like to talk to that guy if we could, but that may be, we may need to grow this thing up a little bit.
Yeah, let him work his ranks up. I mean, he did Rogan, but let's see what else he does,
And then Randall Carlson, of course, is going to be a must. So this is a rabbit hole that I find really fun, and it seems like other people in the chat and other people that are following along with us find it fun too. So if you listening to this at any point, if you find this fun, then you can hop into the supporting listeners group, come join the Discord, and we'll talk about this stuff in there. We're going to be reading this book, Fingerprints of the Gods, for the month of December, and we'll have lots more things that we'll discuss about it. So subscribestar.com/kingpilled. Sign up. If you sign up at the there's three tiers right now. There's peasants, there's helicopter pilots, and warlords. If you're a helicopter pilot or a warlord, then you'll have access to the book club live Zoom call that we'll do, where we'll chat about all this kind of stuff. And yeah, I think that was all the stuff we had to hit on today. You think of anything?
No, just re-downloading Fingerprints of the Gods here on my Audible.
You'll enjoy it.
Yep. I certainly can't wait to hear what old Cooper has to say about this.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in. And do the whole like, share, and subscribe. Do all that stuff. If you're just watching this for the first time you encounter this channel, then give us a subscribe and like and share the video. And yeah, see ya.